Moving on to some of the other stories we're following today, including this Rust trial. The armorer who loaded up the gun fired by Alec Baldwin on the movie set has been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. She faces up to 18 months in prison, and her trial, I guess, could provide a roadmap of sorts, right, for Alec Baldwin himself, who's scheduled to go on trial in July. So the attorney, Seth Berenzweig, joins us right now, maybe break all of this down. Good to see you, Seth. I want to talk about the James Crumbley trial in a moment as well. But on this, is that true that there could be a roadmap for Alec Baldwin, or does it have the opposite effect where it makes it less likely that he's convicted of a crime? I mean, how do you look at it?
Well, it's definitely a sneak peek. Alec Baldwin is able to watch the tape and see exactly what happened, and it does provide him an advanced blueprint of how this case, which stems directly from the tragic and, quite frankly, avoidable death on the set of Rust, might be presented by the prosecutors. It's an advantage for the prosecutors because they've already had a chance to polish and present their case. It's an advantage for Alec Baldwin because he's able to get a preview of the nature of the presentation, how the case was tried. He's also going to be in front of the same judge, so he might even get inclination, and his attorneys have already gotten a little bit of a peek as to whether or not the judge is inclined to grant certain objections. But really, it's going to be, in my view, a close call. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for the prosecution because this is a case where there were two people who clearly had the opportunity to avoid this tragedy. Not only the defendant in this case, but Dave Halls, who was the assistant director on the set. He himself testified that he had an opportunity to look at the bullets and that he didn't do an adequate job and that he accepted responsibility. So the defense will say we have intervening criminal acts, and that will be a major defense that the attorneys will be arguing when Alec Baldwin goes on trial later this summer.
So the shifting of the blame, so to speak, the fact that she has been held responsible just in this trial does make it gives Baldwin an advantage, essentially, gives him an argument.
That's right. But it's very interesting when you take a look at that aspect in the broader context of this trial that just concluded, because in this trial that took place over roughly a 2-week period, there was ample evidence about the context in which this tragedy happened, and it was amongst evidence that demonstrated that there was a lot of rushing and unprofessionalism on the set. There was a lack of proper procedures and protections in place. An official from OSHA came in and talked about how it was generally an atmosphere that was not conducive to safety. So I don't believe that Alec Baldwin is completely off the hook, and it's not going to be a slam dunk for him. But certainly when you are talking about criminal liability and you have the intervening criminal acts of two people on the set right there who have the opportunity to avoid this tragic death, it's going to be difficult for the prosecutors to also convict Alec Baldwin of involuntary manslaughter.
Let's shift over to James Crumbley for a moment. We covered his wife's trial when she was found guilty in this school shooting that was carried out by their son. Now the father, James, is on trial. Listening for a moment to one of his defense lawyers in opening arguments earlier today. Let's listen to the case they're making.
James Crumbley was not aware that his son had access to that firearm. Ladies and gentlemen, you will not hear that James Crumbley knew what his son was going to do. He did not know what his son was planning. He did not purchase that gun with the knowledge that his son may use it against other people.
Prosecution obviously says he was grossly negligent in purchasing that gun. You hear what the defense says. Set this one up for us and maybe compare it to the wife.
Yeah, it is so tragic that we're talking about these two cases that are so much in parallel. You're talking about manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter charges in both of these cases, the Rust case and in this case, where there is an attempt, in the first one successfully so, to hold someone responsible on involuntary manslaughter for someone's death, even though that person didn't hold the trigger. In this instance, it is a similar, comparable case. But in this case, there are shocking facts. And I don't buy what counsel was just saying there. She was basically saying on behalf of the defendant, he didn't know, he couldn't know, and therefore he should be found not guilty. Although it is often a stretch to try to deem the parents to be criminally culpable for involuntary manslaughter when the child pulls the trigger, if there was ever a case that called for a guilty verdict, it's this one. James Crumbley knew about his son's deteriorating mental health. He knew about the gun. He purchased it for him. He knew the very day that there was an imminent danger, because just hours before the fatal shooting that killed 4 and wounded 7, he was at a meeting with school administrators where they showed a drawing that his son Ethan had with a drawing of a gun on it and showing dark thoughts. And he didn't even mention anything. Instead, he just left. So it's a tragic case.
It is a terrible case. Wife already convicted. All right, Seth, we'll follow this with the dad. Seth Berenzweig with us today.